All right. Welcome back to the Navigating Baby Loss podcast. I'm Jennifer, your host, and today I am joined by Jen Burgard, and she is the founder of Haven, which is an organization that helps other mamas who are struggling, gives them beautiful gifts. And I'm going to have her tell you all about it in just a minute. But Jen, I'm so happy to have you here. And I would love it if you would share your own loss story about your sweet baby Henry and how it led you to forming the organization that you have now.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here. And yeah, this is a story that I adore sharing. I think everyone loves sharing about their kids, right? And whether they're here with us or not, we all love sharing about them. So thank you so much for having me. Like you said, my name is Jen. So, right, we're in good company over here.
Yes, yeah,
I
we're
don't know
used to
about
that
you, but
name.
yeah, I don't know about you, but there's 3 Jennifers in my class growing
At
up. So,
least. Yep.
so, my story really, I hate to say begins, but this part of my story really begins in 2017. I was pregnant with my second child. I had a little girl at home who was 2.5 and eagerly looking forward to being a big sister. And she was very excited. And the morning of April 4th, which was 2017, I was exactly 39 weeks pregnant and I was making her some breakfast. And I just all of a sudden I didn't feel good. And but I'm 39 weeks. I'm like, sometimes you don't feel good. And so I went to go sat down on the stool and I went, okay, there it is. Okay. I just needed to rest. I'm just tired, you know. But immediately after that, I looked to my husband and I said, oh my gosh, I think my water just broke. And I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, this means I'm going into labor naturally, which is exactly what I wanted. And so I kind of rushed to the bathroom only to realize that my water hadn't broken and it was, in fact, all blood. You know, and I wanted to tell myself that it was still normal, but I knew something was wrong. And I passed out, and when I woke up, my husband had woken me up and was on the phone with the hospital, and we rushed in. And when we got there, they got me hooked up and everything and settled in, but I wasn't doing well. I mean, I wasn't maintaining consciousness regularly. I was cramping. I wasn't feeling Henry move. And so when the doctor came in, he immediately set me to get an emergency C-section. And of course, in an emergency situation, you're put under quite quickly. And when I woke up, um, I asked for my husband, and when he came in, I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know what had happened, what was going on, and he just said, "We're not gonna get to take him home." And it was in that moment that everything changed. I'm gonna pause right here. This is a great place to pause because I think my person is here to get
Oh,
this
good.
gift,
Perfect.
my
Okay.
healing gift. So hang on one
Yep,
sec. I'll
we're
go see
good.
if this is him.
All right.
Unfortunately, that was not him. Just some other
Okay.
strange person
Shoot.
looking in my window.
Oh gosh.
I'm
Right.
sorry. I
You're
mean,
fine.
it'd be nice
Nope.
if he was on time.
Yeah, right. Right.
Ah, all right, I'll just pick up
Okay.
kind of where I left off.
Yeah. Good.
Um, so yeah, that moment really, that's when everything just changed. I mean, they were able to get my son and bring him in, and I wasn't sure what my husband's comments meant exactly until the doctor came in and just said, you've experienced a complete placental abruption, and there were no signs. There was no reason to believe this was going to happen. We didn't see it coming, and you have as long with your son as he'll give you, because they were able to resuscitate him, but after a bunch of tests and everything, he just wasn't going to make it. There was too much damage in the amount of time he spent without oxygen. So he was on a breathing machine that was keeping him alive, and we were able to hold him, and he looked perfect. I mean, he was perfect.
Yeah.
He was, you know, 6 pounds, 13 ounces, 20 inches long, perfect baby, ready, ready for the world. And
Ready.
this thing happened and took him from us just like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I still don't quite understand how that happens. I'll never understand why,
No.
but
No.
it does happen, right? And so, we spent a lot of time. Actually, he was such a little fighter. He spent just under 13 hours with us that day.
Wow.
And in some ways that makes it, sometimes that hurts my heart more, because I think, gosh, he was so tough. He was so tough. It's not fair, but it is what it is, unfortunately. And that was the amount of time that we were given. So you spend, all of that time memorizing his face and memorizing his scent. And I spent that time apologizing, even though,
Mm.
it's not my fault, right? I know that now, but just
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
apologizing. I'm his mom. I'm supposed to keep him safe. And in that moment, I felt like I'd failed. And so it was, a couple days later, because of the C-section, I had to stay in the hospital. But when we did finally go home, we had the car seat in the back. We had the baby bag with all of the things. We were ready for this little boy. His nursery was all set up. I mean, so maternity leave turns into bereavement leave, and then what?
Yeah.
I mean, what a mess. I mean, I had my daughter, and explaining to her what had happened, explaining to her that, he wasn't going to come home, but she's still a big sister. And, she's almost 3 at this point. Like, it's so difficult, but also I'm parenting her and trying to be present and be a good mom to her. I don't want her to see me fall apart necessarily. She can see me cry, but in those depths of grief, those early days where it consumes you,
Mm.
that's not the pretty part. That's the really hard time. And I was trying to be strong for her. I was trying to be a good wife. I was trying to be a good friend. I was trying to be a good patient, right? All of these things. The thing I wasn't doing a good job of was being present in my grief for myself.
Mm.
And that's something that I do regret, that I think I didn't realize until later. It wasn't until I found a couple resources, and some friends had actually sent me some books that were timely and contemporary kind of perspectives on grief. And that really made a difference. When I started to read stories of other people who, were honest about their grief and transparent about what they needed, it was like, oh, well, I could do that. That this seems better. So that was really helpful. But then truly what changed, because those first weeks, months, they're rough. They're really
Mm.
rough. It's hard to even describe, but
Yeah.
it wasn't until, 7, 8 months later, I started to meet other moms, and I felt like, oh my gosh, okay, you have been where I am and you're, 2 years out, whatever it is. And I'm like, I just looked at them and I said, you are surviving. Maybe, maybe I can too. So those people were my light. Those were the distant light off in this dark grief tunnel, that I could cling to and squint and just barely see. But I just thought, someday that'll be me. And someday I think I'm gonna be okay, And it
Mm,
wasn't until these other women, came into my
yeah.
life. And so I think about that a lot. And, as I, through that first year, I thought about a lot, all about, the things that were helpful, the things that weren't helpful. And then it occurred to me, like, why aren't we offering better support to parents experiencing this traumatic loss? At first I thought it was just me. Hang on, I'm going to pause 1 second here. I'll
Yep.
restart
Yep.
that sentence.
You're good. You're good.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, Dan.
Yes.
Okay. Nice to meet you.
I really appreciate you. I do it all over my. We want to have a bunch of different people at our office. In charge of this, so I wanted to do one plot difference. I told them, hey, this is what I think we should do, so we got our money. And then they're like, well, yeah, we'll do this month. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Not everyone does, and it always takes a decision to reach out. So coming down with a part of it here for them, and there's a few here for them.
But if she's gonna reach out. And tomorrow, everybody else in the office. So I think she might stop by for that for a little bit. So they wanted to admit it for that.
Great.
Going to pay
We are a donation, we're not on it.
Oh.
We are donation based.
Okay.
It's a free to families.
We'll give you.
Absolutely.
We'll do it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
As again, there was. I mean, it's amazing that you have something like this.
Thank you. You're doing the right thing. It just takes a big one. So, awesome. Thank you.
Very
So nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a great rest of your day.
I will. Thank you very much. Can I take one of your cards?
Yes, please do.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're good. And I locked my door.
Was that a father who was?
No, so he is actually an employer. So what happened, this woman is coming back to work today and tomorrow after losing her child. And as a collective, the office wanted to do something for her, and so someone had heard of Haven and the healing gifts that we make. And so they asked if I could make one really quick. So I made one this morning and had it ready for him to pick up this morning. So
That's so amazing.
yeah.
What a
So
wonderful man.
I know. He's like, well, I just didn't know what to do. I'm like, you're doing it. You're doing the right thing.
This is what you do. This is all you can do. Oh my God.
Right.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
Oh,
One family at a time.
yeah. No
Trying to
kidding.
make a change, make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you for being patient with me.
No, that was so good. That was so good. No,
It's just the mission, right?
that's it. That's why we're
do the
here.
mission. This is why
right?
I'm here. So I got to do it.
This is why we were given this experience. This
Right?
is why.
I
Yeah.
do feel, yeah, that I was given this experience for a reason. And I feel like I am doing it not just in honor of Henry, right? Because it's in honor of myself and in honor of everyone else's babies and everyone else that's gone before us that didn't have support and didn't
Oh,
talk about their kids, right? And
yes.
yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's bigger than me. And right, it takes so many of us to make this
Yeah.
change. And so
Yeah.
I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing. Anyways, okay, I'll stop.
No, we're good. Oh gosh, it's so good. I love it.
Yeah.
Aw.
So, it wasn't until, so I met these folks and, I was collecting all of these resources that were helpful and collecting notes about what wasn't helpful. And, because there's a host of those too, right? The books
Mm.
that don't help.
Yeah.
And, and I just thought, well, why can't we get all of these resources into these parents' hands right away?
Yeah.
Why not? So they don't have to wait a year or 2 years and say, gosh, I wish I would have had the book right away. That would have been really transformative for me. And so, just to me, I was like, well, this seems simple enough. And it basically started as a craft project, to soothe my mama heart, right? And I just said, I'm going to, gather all these books and these things that were great, and I'm going to put them together in this gift, and I'm going to make this available to parents. And I funded the first couple myself. And, after that, it was like, well, maybe you have something here. Maybe people want to donate in support of this effort, and sure enough, people did want to donate and help support this mission. And I gave out the very first gift on the eve of Christmas Eve of 2017. And
Oh,
I have remained friends with that mom since then. And, you know, it was it was about the wonderful things in the gift, but to her, she'll even say it was more about that I had someone. Now I have someone who I know who's been through this and I can talk about all of the hard stuff with, and they just get it. They
yes.
just get it. And bless everyone who is there and shows up, but there is something so special about someone who's been where you've been.
Oh, so true.
Yeah. And so, these gifts started going out, and as they did, these moms started connecting with one another. And then after that, they were like, well, let's get together. Is there something we can do to get together? And I think, the traditional, support group where we all sit in a circle and say, hi, my name is Jen. Here's the way that my life sucks. And this, now next and around the room. And that's great, right? It's so great. And
Yeah.
for some people, for me, it just, I had trouble connecting because it felt so forced and it felt like
Mhm.
awkward and I don't know. And so I thought, well, what if we have normal activities or events where people can organically connect with one another like we do in friendships, just regular friendships, right? And so what if we did coffee meetups, or what if we did, different activities and yoga or hand lettering classes, or, we all got together and did this cooking class, all of these different things that we can do and talk about our kids as much as we want and laugh as much as we want, cry if we want, but it's all okay. It's all safe zone because
Mhm.
you're around all these folks that get it, and no one's going to judge you for laughing too hard, or if you are laughing and then you immediately start crying, like it's all good.
Yes.
And so these events really kind of took off. And so, that trickled into what if we did like a weekend retreat? And so we started hosting retreats for moms and found a retreat center not too far from where we're at here and rented it out and hosted our first retreat. And I'll never forget, some of the moms that showed up at the door and said, I almost didn't come. I almost turned around halfway here because I was just so nervous. But those are the moms that we had to like push out the door at the end, that wanted to help clean up, that
Yes.
wanted to
Yes.
stay. And now, they're friends with these other moms, and, they found this connection. And They have people now in their corner that they can turn to when things are tough. And when they post about their kid on social media, those moms are always going to comment. Those moms are always going to give them, feedback and give them a like and a love and a thinking about your baby, And so really this organization, you know, just stemmed from wanting to create a better support system and a network where parents can find one another and feel supported and feel connected. And that's what we've done. And we've slowly worked our way through that over the last almost 5 years now. So
Oh my gosh, that is the most incredible story of just taking your experience and really making it. I think we all have that thought right afterwards.
yeah.
How do we help someone? How do we help someone else through this? But just finding that really organic, comfortable way that you were able to connect with people. It's so beautiful.
Mm, Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for sharing that and for what you do. There's so many things that resonated in that for me. And I think that is why I do what I do, because it is the loneliest place on earth, isn't it? The
Yes,
minute
it
you
is.
have that loss, people, are trying to help you in their
Mm-hmm.
odd ways and odd
Mm-hmm.
phrases that they say to you, and they don't know what to do. But how beautiful to show up for someone, I think, and not have them feel that loneliness.
Right. And so the other really overarching mission that we have been working towards is bringing awareness, right? Is bringing awareness towards grief and loss. And because right, you said, there was a certain number of people that show up, maybe they say weird stuff, maybe they're great, whatever it is, but there are too a certain amount of people who just ignore you and
Yes.
are kind of scared and really just don't know what to say, and so they say nothing,
Yeah.
which for some that can feel better. For me, that hurt. It hurt when people didn't acknowledge it or didn't say anything or referred to it as my business, and I'm like, well, I have a
Yeah.
son. It's
Yeah.
not my business, necessarily. But
Right.
so I think the more awareness we can bring around pregnancy loss, infant loss, child loss, I think we can get people more comfortable talking about it and accepting that this is happening, right? And here are some things that you can say, right? So I always try to look at it from a positive perspective. I want people to have tools. I want people to have tools that they can use when they run into someone in a grocery store or back at work, hey, I'm thinking about you. I'm really sorry this happened. Is there anything I can do for you right now? Do you want to share with me about your child? Those are things you can say. And I try to push those rather than posting a list of things they shouldn't say, because I think we can scare people out of saying anything, right? Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? Like, so you're looking
Yeah.
at this list like, oh my gosh, how am I going to not say any of this? I'm
Like
definitely going to say some
what
of
should
this.
I say?
Right.
Yeah.
And so instead you say nothing.
And it
And
is
that
one of
feels like the
those.
safe part.
Yeah. No, it's one of those things you learn a lot as you go through it. Like, oh yeah, I hope I've never said that to someone, but I probably have, because you just don't know.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, I had an experience myself in the grocery store right after my loss, my first trip to the grocery store, and I was pushing my cart down an aisle and I saw someone spot me and turn around and go the other way,
Yep.
because
Mhm. That's real.
they didn't want to have to try to say something to me. And it was devastating. It was devastating
Mhm.
because you just felt more lonely than you already were.
Mhm.
And so I think it is, yeah, the awareness is so huge, and it would be so helpful to give some people the tools. And it's so simple. It's so much simpler than they
Yeah.
think it is.
Yep. Yep.
The words are so much simpler, and just to be willing to listen. Is
Right?
it
Because I
yeah.
think, grief is one of the things, I guess, all right, fine, math could maybe be the other one, but grief like crosses all cultures, right?
Yeah.
We all experience grief in some way, shape, or form in our lives. And, why can't we have that connect us rather than isolate us? Right. I mean, so many of us, I won't say all, many of us will experience, let's say, the death of a parent, the death of a friend, a grandparent, someone that we care about is going to leave this earth. And we are going to have to work through that. And if you, as someone who doesn't know what to say to someone who's lost a child, tap into that. Tap into your experience in loss and grief, and just think, what would have been helpful for someone to say? Yeah, it would have been helpful if someone would have asked me my grandma's name, and ask me like what I'll miss most about them, just
Yeah.
simple things, and so child loss isn't necessarily different when you're talking about, high level, what can I say to someone? So, and it can make all the difference for that person going
I
through it.
think, yeah. And I think in grief in general, some people are afraid to talk about the person who's passed or the baby who's passed because they're afraid it might remind the person
Yeah.
of them and make them sad. But what they don't know is, we never forget. My loss was 23 years ago almost. And it is, I mean, it's there. It's
Yeah.
there forever.
It's there. And here you are, you're still doing this work, talking about, your
Yeah.
child and your experience because it matters, like what is the, grief lasts as long as love lasts. And, it'll be different over time for sure. And my grief is different, after the last 5 years. It's different, but it's definitely still there.
Mm.
And I'll say, I think I'm really proud of myself because I have educated myself on grief and loss and educated myself on how I can be transparent about what I need and how I can help other people through that. So, I wish I would have journaled right away in those first few months. I wish I would have kept a journal, which is why we always include a journal in our healing gifts, encourage folks to do that because I could look back at that now and just say, oh my gosh, look how far you've come. And I should probably start journaling now and then look back at it 5 years from now
Yeah.
and say,
Yes.
look at how you've grown, look how your love has changed over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for that.
So good. Yeah. So let's talk about your healing gifts
Sure.
and what
Yeah.
is included in them. How do you acquire the gifts? How do you know what to do?
Yeah. So the first off, I will say that the first year we did like 19 healing gifts, and now we are over 200 just for this
Oh my
calendar year.
God.
So it's increased, which, two things is, one, people say, oh my gosh, that's so sad. I said, well, it is. But what we know is that, loss, the statistics on loss haven't really changed in decades. And so what that tells us actually is that we're reaching more families. Each year we are reaching more families, which is something to celebrate. So these losses are happening regardless. So, I'm just glad that these gifts are getting where they're supposed to be. So included in these, I mean, I think they're fantastic, but things that I
Oh,
think were helpful. One thing that a friend gave me was what's called an adult coloring book. If you've seen them, they're more intricate patterns
yes.
made for adults.
Pretty.
And so we actually include those as well as markers. And it's something to keep your hands busy because you don't have a child to care for at this moment, what you thought you'd be doing. And so it's just something to keep your hands busy. And the special thing about these coloring books is actually they are volumes of a coloring book that a woman does. It's called Avery's Garden, and she makes specific pages for children. So as a parent, you can submit information to her and she will do a custom drawing special for your child. And it's included there's like 20 some volumes of this coloring book.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So you can submit, a quote, an animal that reminds you of them, a scene, whether it's angels, bears, giraffes, space, whatever it is. And she creates this beautiful drawing. So
Oh,
I did submit one for Henry, and within each book does give you the information on how to submit that. But so these parents are given right away this coloring book full of other kids, right, that they can honor and remember. And so as they're coloring, so that's one thing. We always include a journal. There's a book that we typically include as well. It was a book that was really helpful for me. It's called "It's Okay That You're Not Okay" by Megan Devine.
it's a good
It's a
one.
fantastic book. It's the book I wish I would have had right away. We include self-care items. So whether it's a cooling eye mask for those really painful eyes, soft tissues, lots of spa items, hand masks, foot masks, little puffing eye masks. There's a remembrance candle that is custom poured in each gift with their child's name on the top of it.
Oh,
So lots of things. I could keep
beautiful.
going. We'll do gift cards in there when we have the resources to do so, all kinds of stuff. And then the biggest thing that I wanted to make sure that parents had right away was a list of resources and a list of good resources. So we have a resource card in there that has links to places like Still Standing Magazine online, where it has some great blog articles on there. And then, of course, our website, our podcast, other podcasts that are helpful, grief support groups that are regional, all kinds of stuff. The Molly Bears link is on there, different things that are really important and would be great to get right away, to know that that's an option right away. So
that's
yeah,
beautiful
there's all
because
kinds of stuff in there.
oh
So
my gosh, it sounds so every detail is just so beautifully thought out and kind and personalized. It sounds like it's beautiful. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned having your nursery ready, right?
yeah,
Because we're really good at that. We get everything ready. We are ready to go with this baby. And then I mean, obviously, we don't want any preparation for what if something like this happens, but when it does, it's great to have those resources coming right to you so that you can start working on this new life that you have now post loss. So,
right. That's
yeah.
what it is. That's exactly it
Mhm.
too. Yeah, your life changes. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I feel like my life is divided into before and after at this point.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
before Henry and it's after Henry. That's just
Yeah.
the timeline that I live on. So I don't know
And
if that'll
and
change,
I
but
would even add that I had some years of, you know, self-doubt, self-esteem. My self-esteem was really low. I blamed myself. There were some years of that too before I allowed myself to get the help and the healing that I needed to have.
right, because I think that's true. Sometimes there's a certain amount of time where you don't want to be healed.
No.
I didn't even like that word because I would say there's no healing this, right?
Well,
I
and
mean,
I was afraid if I healed, that would make me forget,
right.
or it
Yeah,
would be somehow, dismissive of this experience. And I didn't want that because it was such a
exactly.
huge part of your life.
It is. Like, that's exactly it. And you're like, well, if I'm healed, then what? Then we all forget and then
Yeah.
we all move on and this never happened. Like that doesn't feel right. But
Mhm.
you learn, I think, as you go
Yeah.
that it just gets different and you're able to handle it better. And you know, I know now that I can visit my grief whenever I need to, which is such a powerful tool. And I would recommend that. I would recommend not ignoring it when it bubbles up and,
Yeah.
giving it time and space and saying, you know what, yeah, I can give this 5 minutes because I know that in 5 minutes from now, I'll feel better having walked through this and experienced whatever is on my heart right now. And then later I can move on with the rest of my day. And if I need to go back and revisit it again tonight when I'm at home, I can do that. So
Yes.
give yourself the power to have that control over your experience and your feelings and your emotion, and know that it's not that you're forgetting. You
Mm-mm.
need to continue and find a way to navigate your life, right? While holding space and finding time to hold space for them.
Because that is truly honoring your baby, is the moving on, and is not stopping your life because of them, but just finding, because I think you go through these experiences and you find so many gifts and so much beauty and your appreciation of life from it.
Oh, for sure. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think perspective is the biggest thing that you gain when you lose your child.
Yes.
We've gained this different perspective on what's important and what's not. I mean,
So much. Yeah, you
isn't it?
do.
I mean, I don't think I wasn't a bad person before, but now I'm
No,
just
but
like, no, I am woke now, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
I can identify, I feel like, pretty well what's important to me. And I feel like I'm living a life really authentically now.
Mm,
And that does feel really good. So I would
mm,
give anything to have Henry back and have him with
mm.
us, but also to trade what I've learned and trade the person that I've become, that'd be a tough trade. you know.
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
would pick him every time, right? We
Every
all would.
time, of
Every
course.
time.
But
But you can appreciate the things that you did get
yeah,
from loss.
there are
You know,
things.
there
Yeah.
are things, and that comes with time, right? I wouldn't
And choosing to
uh
look for them.
and choosing to look for it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That just doesn't happen by accident. So,
No. What advice would you give to someone if they wanted to start an organization of, gift giving, or even just getting people together? What
mhm.
has been helpful?
I think give it a little time. I think right away can be really great to do something small. Like if you want to, do a run or a walk or an event in honor of your child, I think right away is a great time to do that.
Mhm.
And then decide, what you want to do. Like what's your goal? Are you raising awareness? Are you raising funds? Are you, what's your goal for that event? And then if you want to consider starting an organization or taking it to that level, absolutely. I mean, that's what I did, right? But I also did it because I felt like my community didn't have the resources. So if your community has the resources, maybe reach out to them and see if they need a volunteer. That's a great place to start
Mhm.
and get some experience and get an idea of like what it takes to do this kind of thing. I say this started as a craft project for me, and that was in the end of 2017, and in the May of 2019 it became my full-time job. And
Wow.
I had to make that decision, is this something I want to continue to do on the side, or is it something that if I give my full attention to can really grow and make an impact for people? And I think as we talked about how grief changes over the years, you need to be aware of where your priorities are going to be over the years, right? So having a real conversation with yourself about what that looks like for your future. Because I think it's amazing. I think the more people that do something in honor of their kids and to help families out there experiencing loss that are still experiencing loss is so great, right? The more awareness we can bring, the better, right? I mean, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And so I think that's great work, and I think if you have it in your heart, you should do it. I think you should
Mhm.
at least research and try a couple things and see what fits, see what feels right for you. So
Yeah.
that's, I
I
guess, the
think,
advice I would give.
yeah, no, that's great. And I think honestly, even just sending a note, just sending a note to someone that has had a loss, those are some of my most treasured items from that time, were
Mhm.
a couple notes that I got from people who I had no clue had ever experienced something like this.
Yeah,
Them
that's
coming
very
forward, offering their listening ear, like, that was everything. So, even if you don't have to, want to or don't have it in you to start a foundation, certainly just start small and reaching
There
out.
are so many ways you can honor your child. And I think, we think back to those folks who reached out to us and said, "Hey, I lost a child. This was their name. This is when they were born. And
Yeah.
if you ever want to talk and have coffee, there you go." That
Means
is
everything.
that means everything, right? And if more of us could do that, I think just to know, just right, because we all just want to know we're not alone in that moment. And so I think the more we can help, that crisis, right? The
Yeah.
better that we'll all be. And that's big. That's huge because not everyone can do that either. So
You're right. Yeah, you're right. So being willing to share your story with someone else is healing for both of you, I think, really.
it is.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, it is. And, I share my story a fair amount, right? Because of, the podcast
Mhm.
and because of the organization and the mission. And, each time I tell my story, I wouldn't say it gets easier, but it helps me. It
Mhm.
helps me to share about him because I feel like, oh, now this other big group of people knows about my son, which is great. And I love talking about him. But I mean, it helps me to kind of put into words my love and my thoughts and my feelings on grief and loss. And because then sometimes I can walk away from that story and say, "Jen, you should take your own advice." You should take your own advice.
Yeah.
And that's really good for me. So I think you'd be surprised at sharing your story, what it does for you. And just simply by doing that, you're honoring your child and giving them a name and a permanent place on this earth and an impact on someone else. Their footprints are now in someone else's heart too.
Mhm.
And that's kind of great.
Which is as a mama, that's all we want, right?
Right?
For
Yeah.
all of our
I
children,
know. Just don't
living
forget
in
them. Don't
yeah,
forget them. They
yeah,
matter. Yeah.
they
They
sure
matter.
do.
Yeah.
Well, Jen, can you tell everyone where they can find you? You have a beautiful website full of amazing resources and a new podcast, right? Is it new?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. New as of about 6 months ago. So
Yay.
yeah.
So
So
yeah, let everybody know where they can find you.
yes. And so our healing gifts can be requested by anyone. We ship to all of the states, which is fantastic. We
Wow.
also ship to
Great.
Canada.
Oh my
So
gosh.
our website is havenmidwest.org. Again, that's havenmidwest.org. And then you can request a healing gift on our website. There is a super slick form that you just fill out and it goes directly to us. And we hand pack each one of those gifts. They're hand packed by other lost mamas and we ship them right out. So we include
Wow.
who the requester is if they choose to be identified. Otherwise, it can remain anonymous. And yeah, so those go right out. And then we also have our events up there, any upcoming events, and of course, a link to our podcast called Landscape of Loss, which I host. It's a relatively new endeavor for us. And again, we are trying to bring more awareness to loss. We are giving parents an opportunity and a space to share their stories about their children. And we're also talking with practitioners and others who work in the loss field. We've talked to funeral directors, all kinds of different folks, medical professionals, and grief and loss coaches. And we are providing just a space for all of those things to come together and to be a resource for parents, but also be an opportunity for those parents to share about their kids. So
Mm.
yeah. So give it a listen if you want. Landscape of Loss. It's available everywhere that you get your podcast content.
It's a great one. I've been listening. It's so good. So
Thank
yes,
you.
definitely check that out. Well, thank you so much, Jen. I'm so happy to have you here and to share your expertise in the way that you have built this amazing foundation for your sweet Henry and how many people it's touching. I just so appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. That means the world. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And you continue your great work also. This is
Oh,
fantastic. I'm
thank
so
you.
grateful to be on.